Don't quit. Don't give up. Your struggles are real and they are hard, but keep going. Because my own version of hell on earth lasted a very long time, but it didn't last forever. And if I had given up, I never would have made it through and I wouldn't be a nurse today.
In this episode, Edythe has a candid, moving discussion with her guest about her husband's betrayal, surviving job loss while being a single mum, and her guest's multiple journeys through hell and back.
Hi folks, I'm your host Edythe Richards, and you may know me from my podcast series, Myers-Briggs Question Corner, or my website, atopcareer.com. I've spent the last 20 years of my career helping people get smart about their careers. And I've found that lots of smart people aren't successful. Why is that? I'm convinced it's due to emotional intelligence. In EQ at Work, I'm bringing you inspiring people and messages to help you get smart about your emotions. My guest today, Virginia, is a single mother of 2 adolescent children. Her life turned upside down 11 years ago, and she spent the last several years rebuilding. This is a story of betrayal, emotional turmoil, and the collateral damage to not just my guest as a victim, but to her extended family. We'll hear about job loss, legal battles, financial difficulties, a career change midlife, and everything that goes along with that. Finally, we'll hear about what it took to bounce back and what the future holds. Virginia, hello and welcome to EQ at Work.
Hi, Edythe, and thanks for having me on your show and allowing me to share my story.
Well, we are thrilled, beyond thrilled that you are here. So let's just go ahead and dive right in. If you could share where you are right now.
Okay, well, like you said, I'm 49 years old and I'm a single mom of 2 children. They're 16 and 11 right now. I'm a registered nurse and I work full-time in a nursing home taking care of elderly patients. I'm also a college student right now, taking a couple of classes at a time to complete my bachelor's degree in nursing.
Well, you've certainly got a lot going on, and kudos to you for doing the great work that you are doing. There's always going to be jobs out there for nurses, and especially people who are specializing in working with the elderly. So really pleased to hear about that. So I know there was an incident that occurred a little over 11 years ago. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. So I went to college right out of high school, and then I spent about 18 years building a career, and I had a great job doing what I loved. My husband and I both had really good jobs, and I thought we had the perfect little family. We had a 4-year-old girl and a 6-month-old baby boy. We had a nice house. We enjoyed a very comfortable lifestyle, but my life got turned upside down one day, and my husband got arrested. He had been living a secret life, like behind my back, and committed some pretty horrible crimes. I knew nothing about it. And when I found out that he had been arrested and found out what he had done, I was completely in shock. I had such a mix of emotions. I was sad. I was angry. I was in disbelief. I was just dumbfounded at the idea that he had been doing these things under my nose for so long and I hadn't seen it. I didn't have a clue.
You just had no idea.
No idea.
That in itself must have been quite the blow.
It was, and I was terrified because overnight we went from that perfect little family that I thought we had, and we were 2 kids, 2 parents, double income. We had been living such a comfortable life, and then all of a sudden I was a single parent overnight with a single income, and I had 2 little kids at home. So it was really hard. I had to take the first week off work after his arrest because I couldn't function. I went alternately from like fits of rage to fits of despair. I spent a lot of time crying. And I was also trying to put on a brave face and a brave front to act normally for my kids' sake because I didn't want to let them see me collapse.
Yeah, you can't let that happen. And even though you're tearing up inside, just putting on that brave, like I can't imagine how hard that must have been.
It was super hard. And it was a few days before they even knew that their dad wasn't living with us anymore.
Oh,
So, I mean, he had worked a different job with different hours than I did, so they weren't really used to him being home in the evening. And it was a few days later when I finally told my daughter that her dad wasn't coming back home. And all I could tell her was that he had done some really bad things and he had to go away to be punished for what he had done. My son was only like 6 months old, so he was too young to understand any of it. So I didn't really have to explain it to him.
mhm.
And then after that first week, I went back to work and I tried to start picking up the pieces of my life that I was just broken. I made enough money to support my family on my own, but we weren't living as comfortably as we had been before. I had to start watching every dollar I spent, and we weren't able to enjoy a lot of the extras anymore, like going on vacations or eating out at restaurants anytime we wanted to.
Yeah. So you had to be really mindful about expenses,
I
huh?
did, yeah. For about the first month, I was so angry and I was so hurt over what had happened, and it was just tearing me up inside. I hated my husband for what he had done, and the stress of having to try to deal with it was just killing me. So after about a month, I finally came to the conclusion that, if I didn't want to be living that way the rest of my life, in order for me to be able to have peace, I would have to forgive him for what he had done. And if I didn't forgive him, I just knew there was no way. I didn't feel like there was any way I could move on in my life and heal from the hurt that he had caused me. So I forgave him and I started to move on with my new life as a single mom.
Well, I mean, this might even be a separate conversation about forgiveness, but how do you even begin to forgive someone in the midst of all of that and within a month after all of this happened? But I want to kind of get back to the story here, and because your husband was imprisoned, and so I'm wondering what the effect of that was on you and on the kids.
Okay, so yeah, after he got arrested, he was out on bail actually for about 6 months. And during that time, like I said, the first month was really hard, but then I forgave him. I tried to move on and I arranged to like have some supervised visitation times where he could see the kids. And I went to the visits with them so that the kids would feel more comfortable.
Hmm.
But then about 6 months after his arrest, he got sentenced to do 6 years in prison.
Mm.
So he was gone. And then while he was in prison, I allowed him to still continue to call and talk to the kids and write letters to them. And I even allowed the kids to go visit him twice a year. I would take them. I wouldn't go on the visits myself, but I had a friend come with me. She was a good family friend. So she took the kids in for me so that they could see him.
What a great friend to have in that case.
Yeah, she was a great support person for me and still is to this day. I love the woman. my kids my kids love her. They call her aunt. I never wanted my kids to be able to accuse me of not allowing them to have a relationship with their father. So just because he ruined our marriage, he was still their father, and I tried to make sure that they could have that relationship with him as much as possible while he was gone. But it was hard on the kids too.
Yeah.
My daughter, she was old enough. She had 4 years of bonding time with him before he left, and she really missed him. She begged me to tell her what he had done, but I really couldn't. All I could tell her was that I would explain it to her when she was old enough to understand. My son was about 2.5 years old before he asked me, he said, "Do I have a dad?"
Mm.
Because previous to that, he wasn't going on the visits because he was too young. He wouldn't understand. He didn't know who this man was. But when he asked me if he had a dad, I tried to explain him that yes, he had a dad, but he had to go away to be punished for some bad things that he had done. And then at that time, I started letting him go on the visits too.
That must have been devastating to hear that question from your young child, your 2-year-old child.
Yeah, it was hard. It kind of
Mhm.
it punches you right in the gut when you hear things like that.
Yeah,
So I think though the fact that he went away affected my daughter the most because she was older and she did have that time with him previously.
right.
So she missed him more. And we had a neighbor who had a girl that was just the same age as my daughter. And the two of them used to be friends. They would play together outside or they'd go to each other's house. But after he got arrested and the knowledge of what he had done went public, the neighbors didn't allow their daughter to play with my daughter anymore.
Mm.
And my daughter didn't understand why her friend wasn't allowed to play with her anymore. She didn't understand why she wasn't going to the neighbors' birthday parties anymore or even playing out in the backyard. It was all stopped. So we had been shunned basically by the neighbors. And my daughter suffered because of it needlessly because of the things that her father had done.
Yeah, these are some of the things that we don't think about, these effects on, the neighbors and as such on the family.
Yeah.
What do you do in that case?
Well, I did my best to try to comfort her. Her pain, though, in that it hurt me a lot, especially because she was innocent. She did nothing wrong,
Mm,
nor did the rest of our family. It was all because of him.
yeah.
But because what he had done was public knowledge, the neighbors were afraid that something was going to happen, whatever. So even now, I mean, it's been almost 11 years and the two girls hardly ever speak to each other. We still live next door to each other, but
Oh my gosh, what a shame.
yeah, and I sometimes wonder, like, how would their friendship, transformed, or how would it have blossomed if things had been different?
Hmm.
So, and then my son, he basically had to grow up without a father around for basically his whole life. He had no memories of his father because his dad just wasn't there when he was, when he was young. And then for how it affected me, I guess I'd say that over the first month when I was so angry and bitter, I'd just say, after that, I tried to cope the best I could. It was stressful and it was hard being a single mom and working full time, but I managed. I was tired all the time and I was just always on the go, but my marriage was destroyed. But I don't know, I never got divorced because I didn't see it as being necessary. But, legally, I'm still married, but my marriage is over.
Hmm. So then fast forward another 6 years, your husband was getting ready to be released from prison. So take us back to that time.
Okay, so yeah, when my husband was getting ready to get released, I was trying to be nice to him. I was trying to help him out, and I wanted him, to have the best chance at reintroduction to society that he could. So I was trying to help him find a place to live. I was trying to help line up some job, interviews for him. He had done everything right the whole time that he was in prison. He did all the programs he was supposed to, and I really believed that he was remorseful for what he had done. So I wanted to try to help him. And I felt that he needed the help. So much had changed over the 6 years that he was gone. So, I mean, he couldn't even use a computer at that time. So it made it really hard for him to try to find a job or anything.
Hmm.
I was just trying my best to make sure that he was doing everything right. And I really wanted him to succeed, become a productive member of society. I wanted him to get a fresh start. But unfortunately, some people found out what I was doing to try to help him, and they got it into their minds that I was trying to be devious and trying to do something to try to help him go out and commit more crimes after he returned home.
Oh my goodness. And that when that is couldn't be further from the truth.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
But in the end, the fact that I was innocently trying to help him, it only caused me more heartache and more devastation.
Oh my goodness. So these people found out what you were trying to do. They actually were trying to help your husband. Take us through that.
Yeah, so because of that false belief that I was trying to help him do horrible things, I ended up getting removed from my job.
Hmm.
I had been working in an office that was run by a local government, and someone decided to spread the word that I was somehow doing something devious. So they sent me home from work one day and didn't allow me to come back to my job.
Oh gosh, I tell you, when it rains, it pours, right?
It did, yeah. So, once again, I found myself in that same position. Overnight, my world just turned upside down again. And again, I was in another state of despair, but this time it was worse. I got physically ill from the stress of it. We went from a one parent household with an income that barely got through to now I had no income.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And then there's no relief either because you don't have your partner. And so you've lost your only stream of income now.
Right. I had two kids. I got physically ill. The stress from all of it, I was going through that I couldn't even eat. And like the first 6 weeks that I was out of my job, I lost 60 pounds because I just was not eating.
Oh my goodness. 60 pounds in 6 weeks.
Yeah. And I wasn't trying.
Oh my gosh. That's terrible. So then after that happened, like how do you even begin to bounce back from that?
Well, I started off, I was going through the legal channels that I had to try to get my job back. I was fighting it and I had a lawyer. I was fighting that situation for 2 years, and it was 2 long years.
Gosh, for 2 years.
During that time, I needed a job. So I got just a full-time job working in a restaurant. I was working in the kitchen 5 days a week. I also got a part-time job working as a nurse's aide in a hospital nearby, and I was doing that 2 days a week. So I was working every single day just to try to make ends meet. I was afraid that I was going to lose my house because I wouldn't be able to pay the mortgage.
And meanwhile, you're trying to raise two pretty young kids.
Yep, it was. Yeah, it was very difficult, very stressful, very hard. So, I even had a yard sale trying to sell off everything that I could possibly get rid of because I was thinking that we were going to lose the house. And if I did lose the house, it would just make it that much easier to move anyway. And, I was trying to get a little bit of extra income. Every time I turned around, I had to say no to my kids because, no, I can't buy you that. No, we can't go on vacation. Or no, I can't do that. We can't go out to eat. It was just so many times I had to say no. It was horrible and it broke my heart.
I can't imagine having to go through that. And like you're saying with the kids, they're innocent in all of this, and you're innocent in all of this. This was nothing that you did. And yet you're finding yourself having to rebuild your life.
Yeah. And during that time that I spent in the restaurant, that 2 years, I learned that I did not want to work in a restaurant for the rest of my life. I mean, it was hard work and I was on my feet all day long. I would sometimes come home and just cry because my body hurt so much. And I knew that I couldn't do that forever. But also during those 2 years, I spent, those 2 days a week working in the hospital. I often thought to myself while I was watching the nurses, I was like, I could do that. I could do what they're doing. So after 2 years, I still hadn't been able to get back into my job. And I decided that I was done fighting. Enough was enough. I needed to move on with my life. And I just needed to find a new career where I could be successful in supporting my family.
Good for you. You made the leap into a career in nursing.
I did. I left the restaurant. My first step was to get a different job where I was working in a nursing home.
Uh-huh.
And working in that nursing home, I was working 4 days a week. And I was also going to school, college locally nearby, working there and going to school full time to get my degree in nursing. So I was working as a certified nurse's aide, and then I was going to school to become a nurse.
Okay. More busy times for you.
Yes, I mean, I was working 4 days a week, but it was also more like 5 because I had to do a little bit of overtime here and there. And
Yeah.
so I was basically working full time and going to school and raising two kids at the same time.
But you made it.
I did. And like one of the reasons I left the hospital and went to the nursing home was because they provided a program where you could get tuition reimbursement for anybody who wanted to further their career in the healthcare field.
Okay.
So that's why I began my college journey towards my associate's degree in nursing.
Okay. Good for you. So where are you now?
Well, like I said, I went back to school. I started my life going back in a positive direction. I knew that I was missing out on a lot of time with my kids, and my income level was still in the dirt. I mean, we were literally living below the poverty level.
Oh,
But things were finally starting to change and to go in a positive direction.
yeah.
I had to kind of suck up my pride a little bit. I applied for food stamps to ease the burden financially of feeding my kids.
Uh-huh.
And I also got some financial assistance to help pay for childcare while I was working or when I was in school. And I managed to keep my house. I managed my income tax deductions on my weekly checks so that I paid more than what I needed and throughout the year. And by the time the income tax return came at the end of the year, I had enough to pay my mortgage for the following year. So I didn't have to fear anymore that I was going to lose my house.
That's great.
And, I was doing it. And don't get me wrong, nursing school was very hard. And it was made harder by the fact that I was working full time and being a full time single mom, but I made it.
Well, good for you. Yeah, I can't imagine what an uphill battle. And how are you doing now?
Well, I graduated with my associate's degree last May, and then I passed my nursing exam in July. So I am a registered nurse.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm still working at the same nursing home that I was at. My income is a lot higher now. It actually doubled from what it was when I was a CNA to what I am as a nurse now. So now I'm no longer receiving financial assistance with daycare, which I don't really need daycare anymore anyway, but I'm not getting food stamps anymore. I've gotten off of all of that.
Good.
And right now I'm continuing my education to earn my bachelor's degree in nursing. And that's why I'm taking 2 classes at a time at another local college. Again, still working full time.
Mm-hmm.
And the nursing home is still helping me with the tuition for that. So I'm able to breathe a little bit better now financially. It's still hard doing all of this as a single mom, but I'm doing what I need to do in order to be able to provide for my family.
Yeah, there's what a blessing these programs are that a lot of colleges and universities have, or different jurisdictions that we live in, to help people who are in this situation. I mean, what a blessing I'm sure that's been for you.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's programs out there for people other places too. They just have to look and see what's out there.
Yeah, that's a good point. So you've talked a little bit about this already, Virginia, about how these events have affected you. A little bit, you've talked about it personally and professionally. What else would you like to mention?
Well, I went through hell and back, and then I went right through it all over again. And I've known physical, I've known mental and emotional exhaustion. I've had to swallow my pride and accept help from other people. And that was one of the hardest things for me to do, honestly. I'm not one to ask for help, but I did learn, though, that sometimes it's really needed. And every time that someone has helped me, they have done it out of the goodness of their heart. And I know it made them feel good to be able to do so just as much as it made me feel good to receive the help. And I can hold my head high knowing that I have worked very hard to get to the point where I'm at now. And throughout it all, I never lost sight of my true character. You know, I've had some people who treated me horribly during the whole ordeal that I went through, but I have never treated anybody horribly the way that some of those people chose to treat me. I never tried to cheat the system or felt that anybody owed me anything. I always put forth my best effort at work, even when I was working in jobs that I did not like. I still showed up to work and I did what I was supposed to do in order to keep moving forward.
Yeah. And in doing that, I mean, I think a lot of us can relate to being in these situations. I mean, I'm sure some people tuning in right now can relate to it if they're in these situations that you're in, and it's just for whatever reason, it's just a horrible situation. And you know it's not forever. But maybe, just maybe, we are learning some lesson in this situation that's going to help us move on to that next rung in the ladder, so to speak.
Right. One very important thing that I learned is that I had a strength and I had a resilience inside of me that I didn't know existed. For so long, it just seemed like so many bad things were happening to me, and I can't tell you how many times I thought to myself that my life couldn't possibly get any worse. And then it did. And then it did again. But throughout it all, you know, I just kept working and trying to get through it. At times I was working on little goals, like trying to eat a sandwich during the day instead of only taking 2 bites of food for a day. And other times I had a much bigger goal ahead of me that took months or even years to accomplish, like going to school. Mm-hmm. There were days when my only goal was just to get through the day without letting my kids see me cry. And, you know, not all days were good, but not all days were horrible either. I just kept trying to focus more on the good days.
And that's what got you through.
Yeah.
That general sense of optimism and choosing. And it is a choice, because you used that word earlier, choosing to see the glass as half full instead of half empty.
Right.
Yeah. Now, there are probably a lot of people who are tuning in right now who are struggling with similar issues. I mean, it may not be incarceration or a career change or financial burdens, but, you know, I think it's fair to say that we're all struggling with something now. What would you like to say to them?
My best piece of advice is just don't give up. You know, keep going. There's a song by Rodney Atkins called If You're Going Through Hell. And that song was my own personal anthem for several years when I was going through hell. I just had to keep reminding myself to just keep going. You know, don't quit, don't give up. Your struggles are real and they are hard, but keep going. Because my own version of hell on earth lasted a very long time, but it didn't last forever. And if I had given up, I never would have made it through, and I wouldn't be a nurse today.
Well said. Thank you, Virginia, for sharing your story. Thank you so much for being here today. I know it wasn't an easy story, and we really appreciate it.
Well, thank you again, Edythe, for having me. It was my pleasure to share that with you.
Resilience isn't about winning. It's the strength to propel forward and adapt to stressful situations. There are many elements of emotional intelligence that contribute to our ability to be resilient, including being self-aware, socially adept, and empathetic. When we have the social and emotional skills to handle the unexpected events life throws at us, we'll be better able to advocate for ourselves, to seek support when needed, and solve problems effectively. We heard these examples from Virginia. She sought out legal counsel to help her through her job loss. When she didn't get the results she expected, instead of giving up, she sought a new path and persevered through continued setbacks, but ultimately achieved her goal. Virginia admitted that she doesn't like to ask for help, but she knew that she needed to. And that help in the form of both financial and emotional support was key to getting her through the tough times. When I hear Virginia's story, it's the emotional intelligence element of stress tolerance that comes to mind. The EQ Edge defines stress tolerance as the ability to withstand adverse events and stressful situations without developing physical or emotional symptoms by actively and positively coping with stress. Stress is a normal part of life for everyone, but as we know, too much can have serious consequences, physically, mentally, and emotionally. According to the APA's Stress in America study, nearly 70% of Americans experience physical and mental symptoms of stress, but only 37% think that they're doing very well at managing stress. We can't control all the stress in our lives, but a few things that most of us can control are getting enough sleep, exercise, and proper nutrition. Along with mindfulness meditation, these are known to reduce the symptoms of stress in our lives. A couple other strategies to boost stress tolerance. Know what your triggers are. Stress can have a number of causes, but most of us have a few triggers. For many people, being disrespected or believing we're disrespected tops the list. We may also feel stressed if we're not being listened to, or our needs aren't taken into account, or we see someone else being treated unfairly. Understanding our strong emotional reactions is an important step in building resilience. Don't demand perfection of yourself or others. Many perfectionists fear that if they let go of their incredibly high standards, it will hurt their performance and their status. So they cling to their perfectionism even when it's counterproductive. We're never going to be perfect, yet the more we seek perfection, the more failure will haunt us, and the more pressure we put on ourselves and others. So give yourself and your team or your family a break. And for some people, there's this need for instant gratification. When they don't get what they want at the precise moment they want it, they throw the adult version of a temper tantrum. And we may see this in the form of quickly pacing back and forth, aggressive hand gestures, intense speaking voices, and overall irritability. This leads to long-term dissatisfaction. You're unhappy and unfulfilled because you forego long-term benefits in favor of short-term pleasures and temptations. A quick way to start to get a handle on this: immediately distract yourself. Count to 3 or 5 or 10. One of my favorite exercises is picturing a stop sign or just saying stop. This refocuses the mind on something more productive. Anticipating success and sharing your wins is what shows competence and maturity and emotional intelligence. By not allowing difficult situations to get the best of us and keep us down, we can rise above, believe we can survive, and even thrive because we have endured struggles. Give it a try yourself by putting EQ to work.
Thanks for listening to EQ at Work. Find us using the hashtag EQ at Work, or visit our website eqatwork.net. Subscribe to this podcast via iTunes, Spreaker, or your favourite podcast platform. We'd love you to leave a rating or review, and if you have a moment, a simple share would be wonderful. Remember, tell your friends, mastering your emotions matters. Tune in next week when Edythe speaks with her guest about NLD, or Nonverbal Learning Disorder, the invisible disability that you've probably never heard of.